different culture and different way of operations are notably drastically different from what we think. And this humble our hearts, this broaden our mind, and this also at the same time deepen a little bit of our capabilities and also our tolerance level to say, let's then learn how they do something.
Welcome to another episode of Business Beyond Borders. Today we're very excited to have with us Dr. Victor Tay, who is currently the CEO of Global Catalyst Advisory, who is also the Regional Managing Director of Stout Asia, and also the Group CEO of RHT Consulting Asia. Welcome, Victor, to today's podcast.
Thanks for having me here. Yeah. Thank you.
The first question I'd like to kick off today's episode with is maybe could you tell us more about what you do on a day-to-day basis? You're holding 3 different hats, so would love to learn more about your day-to-day role today.
Yes, it looks like 3 firms, but actually they're quite contiguous. These are 3 joint ventures I had.
Okay.
Firstly, that's the RHT Consulting Group Asia. So basically, we are part of the law firm, and we do anything that's outside of law, and many of the client issues are beyond law.
Yes.
And most of the time, client comes in and it comes with a problem.
Right.
And this could be different stages of their company growth. They could be in startup and raising funds. It could be they are looking to regionalizing, internationalizing, globalizing, going to across continents.
Yep.
Or at times they could be looking at merger and acquisitions. And if not, they're looking at public listing, and therefore looking towards scaling market capitals, etc. So the RHT Consulting Asia actually helps to do one stop from startup all the way down to public listing.
Nice.
Yeah, and the RHT Consulting Asia actually has a MOU that we signed with Stout. Stout is headquartered in Chicago, and in there we had about 28 offices present, and with about 800 over professionals in investment banking, merger and acquisitions.
Nice.
So in there, notably, I think it looks at multinationals, M&A, and with this as well, the MOU is signed with RHT Consulting Asia, so that anything that cross out of Singapore and ASEAN, so that's why they're able to take over and collaborate. The last one is actually Global Catalyst Advisory. That by itself actually was established because we looked at it that consulting, investment banking, all this are very financially driven. But nonetheless, I think when it comes to businesses, I have very passion that business is about contributing back to society. So we established Global Catalyst Advisory as a triple P, which means that it will be aligned to people, planet, profit. So it's not just making a financial revenue, but it's actually looking into how do we benefit people?
Right.
How do we then in here balance on the planet resources?
Yeah.
And in here, notably, we help charity. We help the Association for Persons with Special Needs. We help in some of the non-governmental organizations. We help with even some of the government that we consulted were government of Myanmar, government of Thailand, various government across Middle East, Africa. Yes.
Yeah, and the impact must be very extensive. With that, I also wanted to congratulate you for recently being awarded by APAC Insider as the most influential sustainable business CEO in Southeast Asia 2023. What does that award mean to you?
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I guess we were very flattered and very privileged. The organization that awarded us is actually based in UK, and I guess we were not so much presence in UK. Although we are tied up with University of Oxford in that case. We looked at incubating startups, and notably, I think I've been in the environmental space since 2005.
Okay. Wow.
That was when I was in government. I was in Enterprise Singapore, Ministry of Trade and Industry, Economic Development Board, and very much with that, I started off the environmental engineering services within Enterprise Singapore. At that time round, even an inverter aircons, people ask, should we even buy that? That's more expensive than normal aircon. Of course, time has actually advances now. Now in 2023, post-COP26, everyone looks into environmental protection, climate justice, and all this. So therefore, I think the awards itself actually very much we're looking into the triple P that we have a lot of conviction with. Without all businesses has to be balancing the nature resources, contribute back to the society. And financial is only just one part of it. It should not be all of it in terms of a decision-making process.
Yeah. And I also like to touch on, you have a very extensive career and definitely a lot of experiences that led to where you are today. Could you share a little bit more with us about your professional journey so far and what are some of the key milestones that led you to be where you are at today?
Yeah, you're right. Because I have a slightly curious type of career that sometimes I go to the mentorship programs and I tell them that maybe that teaches us what not to do. Don't follow this kind of career path, right? Most of the time we see people in career path when it goes into consulting and it goes all the way through. They goes into financial and they go all the way through, become financial controller, CFO, investment banking, and so in mine, I started off with a strategy consulting. I was actually with 3 of the big 4. Was with KPMG, PwC, and Cooper's Library, and very much looking at solving CEO strategic problem.
Yes.
Right. So I was in the audit side. I was all on the management consulting side. Which after I was a mid-career hire to government.
Okay.
Most of my colleagues who stay in consulting now, they have made partner. So I cross over to the bright side. So they stay at the dark side. So I went to government and that's where I was in Ministry of Trade, Industry, Enterprise Singapore, Economic Development Board clusters. I think in there, that's where I had learned to look at more macro picture, where business is only a part of an industry. And the industry itself made up of the economy within the entire country, which we looked at industry enterprises. It's not about just financial, but job employment, about value add, about how it contributes to the country. And in there, that's where very much of looking at, we do industry planning for 10 years. I look after about 8 sectors that ranges from aerospace, automotive, marine, oil and gas, environmental sector, biomedical and chemical, as well as logistics. So this sector actually allows us to look at how to grow cluster linkages. And within there, I've also looked at how to grow globally competitive companies. I set up a function called industry clusters, and we had about 80 over account managers who goes out to help to groom company. So on daily basis, every officer will go to visit a company in the morning and afternoon. So in 5-day sessions, they will meet up with 10 companies. And since I've got 80 of them, 80 times 10 would have been 800 in a month, in a week, and then times a month, 4 weeks. And then
3,200.
3,200. And in a year, times 12, that's where easily you have 30,000, 40,000 companies. So upon seeing it in and out, and therefore we picked up the best 5% to be what we want to groom. And that's why we give them finances, we give them grants, we give them technology, we do research with them, and therefore in hope that they can be tomorrow's globally competitive companies. So that was in the government, I was there for about 10 years, and which after I went to NGO space. I was also the chairman for the United Nations Global Compact, and I was also with the Singapore Business Federation. I was acting CEO and also the COO there. And a lot of people would have said, what is that? What is a NGO? It's neither private, which I used to be, or public. I hear this, you're in the twilight zone of nowhere. So within the NGO, that's where it grooms my understanding that I think certain resources, certain community groups where government could not help, and maybe the private as well, and that's where the NGO comes in to champion their needs. That's where I also looks into how to champion the needs of vulnerable groups. I was also chairman of the Association for Persons with Special Needs, and we had about 5 schools for 1,500 special needs. We helped them from 7 years old to 62 years old, and that's why we try to give them job independence, and hopefully they could actually be financially independent themselves. And I guess subsequently after my NGO, I went to university, and now I went to investment banking and run my own firm. So I had my career all flipped the other way around. Usually people do the NGO last, or maybe go to university as a retirement. Hear this, or investment banking would have been what it started off. I'm now actually on the reverse.
Yeah. And how do you think your past experiences has built up to the perspectives to how you help companies to your investment banking role and also consulting role today?
Yeah, I guess if you hear it sounds like a very heterogeneous and also a very winding type of road. And actually, to add it on to the sophistication would have been I was then, apart from strategy consulting, I went on to we were with Pacific Internet, and we were the first one to be Nasdaq listed in Singapore, and I was a CTO, Chief Technology Officer. I was a technical path, and I guess at that period, everyone looks at me and says, "Hey, Victor, you are the IT guy." So much so that even my dad, when his computer spoiled, hey, ask Victor come and solve it. So that was my career path. I was looking heavily trying to shed this image of this IT image, and so I went on to government, and it's like at time claimed to be ignorant, no IT at all. And subsequently going to NGO, I was also the Chief Operating Officer, and going to the university, I was the Chief Development Officer. And so I practically took on all the C-levels scope that I've done, even down to the Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Business Development, and now the CEO, right? So I guess having gone around a circle, that gives me a whole understanding of how the entire job scope of how in a multinational operation or company, how it works. And second part, with the industry knowledge, it also allows me to just see a firm, not from a firm perspective, from a greater part of industry, and not from the economy part. And laying on was also intersecting the people, planet, profit, that businesses has to be sustainable. So I guess this gave me quite a interlaying lens and scope. So I look at things not from a monolithic, one directional, but actually be able to put on a few tiering of lenses so that when decisions are made, they are more holistic.
Makes a lot of sense. And one of the very interesting thing you mentioned earlier is about during your time at government, kind of looking at different companies and partnering with them to help them become globally competitive companies. And at the same time, you also had your operational experience being the CTO at PacificNet, for example, and coupled with your other roles that you have mentioned. What, in your view, today makes a globally competitive company?
When I was in government, the way how they actually define globally competitive would have to be if we are across, our companies are across at least 2 of the 3 continents.
Right.
So I guess that was a definition they had, and competitive means that the ability to compete not just in our home ground, but in our continent, our home continent, and also another adjacent continent. So competitive wise, to be at least your top 5, top 10 in the particular industry. When you want to think about, okay, this is services, this is a firm of the top 10 you can think about. So I guess that was what we originally set out to be. And we had then also looked at a revenue cut to do it. So that was a more government official, where we set up a target how to groom it as the definition. But I guess if you ask me what then is a globally competitive company, I suppose to be competitive, I think the business model has to be sustainable. We've seen in recent years, many businesses are disrupted. What seems to be viable then and doing extremely well, and overnight we see them collapsing. And of course, in the last 100 years, we've seen in the early 1920s, you've seen all the steel company, oil companies are all great companies. They were at least in the Fortune 100 or 50. But which after you see some 50 years later, many of them actually dwindle off. And we've seen even like, of course, past Kodak, Polaroid, great company then. And I recall that during childhood, we were having all the camera that we take selfie, Wi-Fi or for each other. And even those firms actually have fallen. So likewise, whatever firms you're looking at now, I think none of them are actually sustainable or to a longer term. I think one has to guard against a disruption. One had also to be trying to be disruptive to what industry do. And I guess being compliant to how the industry focus alone is not good enough. And that's where within the businesses we had, we actually started something called a venture studio at Accelerator, and we call the Rebel Labs. And the Rebel Labs, we actually start to groom startup that could actually try to transform the norm, try to actually do something that are different and disrupt the norm.
Right.
And because I guess the current industry norm are not the most efficient. A lot of times there are a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of times there are a lot more wastages in what they were doing. A lot of times in terms of what it is very costly as well. So I guess a good business model should be one that the consumer, the customer find cost effective and they actually find it essential. At the same time, whoever runs it should also find it profitable then.
Yeah. What's an example of this startup that you have nurtured or helped build over the last couple of years, if it's open to sharing?
Under the umbrella of Rebel Labs, that's with the RHT Consulting Asia. I think that's where we had grown 2 companies. In early years, about 2018, we're seeded and also established a company called Air Carbon Exchange.
Okay.
Air Carbon Exchange is notably a carbon credit license exchange.
Okay.
That was early years. When in 2004, when I first started the environmental sector, there were already CDP credit exchanges, but that was not doing well. When we started in 2018, we felt maybe time has come, but that was still early years. When we reached 2020, there was COVID, and by 2022, we saw COP26. And COP26 came by, all countries were to actually pledge towards a 2050 carbon neutrality. So in here, all of a sudden, carbon exchange come alive again. And so the voluntary market start to get a bit slightly more active. 2019, we also went on to, being a law firm, we are quite good at getting licenses. So we went on to actually apply for a financial license market, and in this case, we did the Singapore Digital Asset Exchange.
Oh, cool.
So the Singapore Digital Asset Exchange, SDAX, were able to tokenize capital, and in this case, because we had Straits Trading as a shareholder, and we had also ERA REITs, who actually manages Suntec. So notably, we are quite good in terms of tokenizing buildings. So buildings in the traditional route of raising funds is going through REITs. In going through the SDAX way, will be tokenizing it so you can fractionalize it, and therefore you can securitize and raise funds on it. So these two are under the Rebel Labs that we actually had helped to establish some of the startups.
You're really wearing a lot of hats across your different functions. I wanted to turn the page and touch a little bit upon, you had shared a lot of your experiences across different roles, but what I think maybe our audience might not know is that during your time across these roles, you had also visited almost 40 different countries. Even in the early part of your career, when you're at KPMG, PwC, you're working across different countries, and being in a very much international role is at sort of, I would say, core to the roles that you have held across your work stints and also leading delegations. So building on that with your extensive experience living abroad, what are some of the general learnings that you have had? And for people who are looking to think about moving to another country, what kind of advice would you have for them?
So firstly, I'm also with the mentorship program in the Singapore Leadership Network. And within the Singapore Leadership Network, there's established by EDB, as well as the Human Capital Leadership Institute. Very much we've been asking the youngsters to go overseas. And what we found were, despite Singapore is born global because it's a small economy, and we are quite exposed to multiple cultures as well as countries, operation from where we are. So, but what we noticed is the ability for our professionals to be able to actually manage a multinationals or regional headquarters somehow found to be one thing, because within the CVs, usually they'll take a look and say, we've been working in 20 years in Singapore, right? So in here, I think my early years, I was in PwC, then it was called PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was exiled to Shanghai. Those years, 1997, Shanghai is actually, it was a hardship allowance having to go there. I was also sent to Taipei, and was also equally hardship. And having to speak in only Mandarin. And both sides operates under different Mandarin regime. One is on traditional writing. Another one is in more a simplified Chinese writing. And the way how they express are also notably different. And on top of that, then we actually put the region as Greater China. So it includes Hong Kong as well. And Hong Kong is in sophisticated traditional writing while it speaks in Cantonese. So being exiled to such a region, I think most of my colleagues were finding it very difficult. Those years they were saying, yeah, but Mandarin, who speaks Mandarin? I mean, most of my colleagues say that. For me, I think, I'm a Chinese. I think to be able to be closer to a community that my ethnicity is actually close to is something that I thought I should hold some pride, or at least be immersed in and understand the language. And I've been there for like 3 years plus, and that gives me the ability to understand the nuances. Yeah. And which after, of course, we now know, fast forward to 2023, Chinese is one of the largest economy in the world, and soon to be one of the leading economy. And many of this market requires this language and this relationship as well. Yeah. So that brings home a lot of connectivity when it comes to doing business. So that was one advantage. In the other part, when I was in government, we actually led many trips. Yeah. And when I was at Business Federation, we also led trips to lesser known places. So one of those that we go to were like in Africa, or even down to Middle East in the early years, like 10 over years ago. Wow. Of course, now Middle East, in the early years when we go there, even Dubai, Abu Dhabi, it wasn't as flourished as what it is. All the tallest building, tallest hotel, biggest, the Palm, and all the rest were not there, right? And what we do see are deserts, and we see a commitment from them of wanting to grow. Right. So I guess good that we have forged some connectivity there. Yeah. And so now as they flourish, we find that this connectivity and businesses actually flows too. Yeah. And likewise for Africa, I've been to Egypt and went to Egypt, but of course it's one of the most ancient nation and civilization in the world. Yeah. So while it's not easy to do business there, but I guess we all knew Africa will grow. Yeah. And some of this is to know them earlier and not at a later stage. Yeah. I had businesses who many of them say, oh, let's go China now. It's slightly late. Yeah. It'll be highly competitive. Yes. If you've been there earlier, 20 years ago, it'd be a lot better. And likewise for Africa, it's still part of the BRICS and it's still growing well. And that's where some of them maybe should recognize it. Yes, last year I just went to Brazil, Sao Paulo. Right. And Sao Paulo by itself is also quite an interesting place to be at. One of the largest population in the whole South America. By itself is also promising, but unfortunately in terms of their wealth disparity, you could see that they're ultra high net worth and the rest will stay in favela. And in favela, where this is a slum in the Spanish language, right? So many of them in the slums, because they are born in a slum, they have no bank account, they have no schools to go to. The police cannot set up a station within the slums, and even down to doing a e-commerce. Yeah. You're trying to order e-commerce or even a food delivery, nobody can deliver beyond the slums or favela wall. Yeah. So in that case, they almost has no access to resources. And almost, I think, about 80% or 70% of the Brazilian population stays within the favela. So in this case, what I've seen were the social enterprises came out to shine on it. Yeah. What they've done were they actually did this is, since the logistics could not deliver beyond that wall, they decided that they would do the last mile delivery. Oh, interesting. And secondly, since the outside bank would not lend to their people, they knew the favela, they know who are the one who's hardworking, who are the one who have good resources, they know who are the one who can loan money to. So therefore, they start coming out of their own bank and they loan to the right people. And since they know some of these people, they said, perhaps I know who is hardworking, I can also give you entrepreneurial classes, program, and they even come out with venture funds. And then with that, then they said, since we know how to do venture funds, why not we start off even a stock exchange within a favela, so everyone can then public list as well. That's a great example and demonstration that sometimes the commercial cannot solve a problem, neither can the public sector. Yeah. And that's where the NGO, the social enterprises, can come in to shine. Right. And that's where I think looking at solution resolution like that, it tells you that not only it is a business model, but it also can help to uplift the vulnerable group. At the same time, it actually resolve a societal problem. Right. And I think the modern world, businesses should be like that. Yes. Sustainable, resolve a real humankind or mankind problems. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very interesting, and it almost built like a whole ecosystem by itself to these initiatives.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. And some of these global experiences, you kind of brought us around the world. How has that shaped the way that you advise clients today, or your perspectives towards taking on some of the projects that you are taking on today?
Yeah, I guess very much I'm quite humbled by, I think in the past, I recall when early years, even in Singapore, Singtel was about buy over Hong Kong telecoms. I recall I was also in Pacific Internet, and we tend to go around. Pacific Internet had multiple offices, and we went to Hong Kong, Thailand, Malaysia, various Southeast Asia country, and we went around saying, oh yeah, but Singapore, we did it this way. And I guess I recall Singtel went to Hong Kong Telecom, was telling them too. This is how we've done it. And I guess now, after being through decades of multiple countries, I realize how we solve our problem in Singapore is not the way how it could be solved in a different context of different country.
Right.
That's one. Secondly, is it very much humbled us that sometimes we saw how maybe in the Chinese way of doing something, or maybe in another culture, Egyptian way of doing something, we might think as if that is not right.
Yeah.
But actually, when you think about the Sao Paulo way, was wow. That's that's a great way of solving the problem.
Yes.
And that's where using our conventional Singaporean mindset, where we are quite fortunate to be nested in here, government can lead in many initiatives. But in this initiative, it's not what exactly in other country they could.
Correct.
So that's why we are very open-minded to how to resolve problems in new ways.
Yeah.
And the third part of it is, what I've learned is, I think that's why I repeated a few times, the message is, I think when business model is concerned, it's not about financial. I think in Singapore, we hear many entrepreneurs as well. Finance is a lifeline. Without finances, no. And then if it's not profitable, then what's the point of doing? And in here, I've seen were that a lot of time, and we now see in this current era, what we call blended or impact investment. So certain business model comes with certain impact, which are intangible. It may not be financial. And in here, it may be a job creation, it may be a vulnerable group uplifting, it might be in some way educating a larger group, which the return may not come in the next few years, but because of this educated group being uplifted, they become the next higher spending power that can come back and fit this loop. And I think that's where businesses actually does well, should create its own community, and then uplift them, and then later on getting them back here as investors and give you a more systematic closed loop.
Correct. And with that, that also helps to sort of the funds are able to move, and then like more businesses are created, and then more jobs are created as a result. So then the impact would then be amplified.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. And I also understand that with Global Catalyst Advisory, you have advised numerous public, private sector, and non-governmental NGO clientele. And these clients, they are around the world as well. How is it like managing and advising clients from different countries, different cultures? Firstly, some of them are quite impressive, like the Thailand Ministry of Industry and also the Myanmar Ministry of Commerce. How is it like working together with them, and what are some of the cultural nuances that you've picked up?
I think one is we learned that the culture settings and where they come from, the problems are all different. And I guess that's why we learn to appreciate is it's not to impose ideas on them, but to be open-minded to what the challenges and constraints. I guess this is number one part that we see. Thailand has a totally different culture. And Thailand agriculture, tourism, retail is a lot larger than their industrial space and manufacturing.
Yes.
Singapore, on the other hand, we are larger in manufacturing, finances, and all the rest, whereas our retail is actually on the tail end. So I guess that's where there's a need to be open-minded, look at what they were having. And on their space, I think that when we last discussed, they were looking at how to actually create a more value added from beyond what they were having. And I guess sometimes we had some of this government or consulting firm came to us and asked us, even in Middle East as well, could we replicate exactly what Singapore do? Unfortunately, our competence, our strength are slightly different. Our ecosystem is different. The same solution may not prevail. Some of them highlighted that can we just copy exactly your tax incentives, your grants, your SME programs, etc. It just wouldn't work because Singapore is quite unique by itself. We were forced to become independent. some of the places that are more well endowed. I think in Thailand, for instance, they had strength in agriculture. They had a lot of farmers. I think they are more blessed than us. They're more resourceful there. So I guess that's where, in terms of their value added, their industry growth will be quite tremendously different from our destiny in Singapore.
Yeah. And you know, advising clients is one part of it, and then the other part of it is also managing teams who are from basically from different countries. What advice do you have, or maybe could you highlight an instance where you adapted your leadership approach to different cultures and different countries?
Yeah, during COVID days, period about 2020, we took on assignment with China Telecoms.
Okay.
And very much it is a different culture. And in 2020, US, UK very much were, I think there was a decoupling, there was a de-risking that we saw. US started to delist some of the Chinese tech firm. So I guess that's where when we spoke to our client, and our client myself has a different sentiments to internationalization. To Singaporean, we look at internationalization as a must, mandatory, essential, because our domestic market is too small. For in China, the domestic market is huge enough. It's 1.5 billion people, right? So therefore, internationalizing, in fact, become a high risk. It's going out there, and therefore you see all this race and all these issues that resulted from commercial to become political. So I guess in there was to re-adapt the mindset to what they were looking at. In their mindset, they were looking at how to transform themselves from a tech firm, a telco firm, to be a bit more consultative, and how their engineers, as it is, engineering mindset is a problem solving, a very engineering mentality, and how do we become a problem solver? And at the same time, they also give us a third issue was, how do we get their people to think more internationally in that perspective, or understand that why the US reacted to us this way? Why do these guys or other country reacted in that way? And I guess that's where it also add on a new perspective to us. The team that were working on this come from China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, even Malaysia. We found that even as we assemble this team and trying to talk to China, the understanding, the languages are also a problem, even though predominantly the team are ethnically or Chinese are able to speak Mandarin as well. But I guess the ability to speak versus your understanding of the culture is totally different. So I guess in here, what we had then understood is that trying to understand the context of that individual, of that client, sometimes is more important than trying to solve that problem itself.
And living across different countries, how do you build your network when you enter into a new country? And how have you leveraged the networks that you have built over the years to the roles that you're taking on today?
You're right. So the advantage of being internationalized, going overseas, having an international career is that the network that comes to you, which can become handy. And I guess it's to look at them not from a business point of view, but to look from them from a friendship point of view. To look at them from a people to people, a human point of view, that because whatever position they were, some 5 years, 10 years down the road, they may no longer be there. Some of them, whichever prominent position, they may retire. And likewise here, that I could be a government official then, and now I'm investment banking, right? Or I could be something else, and here it is, I've changed. So I guess it's to look at each other from the humanity point, individual, and also in terms of the friendship perspective, that what their strength is, and also what their value is. I guess this is slated for long term. And I guess if the friendship is strong, I think the rest of business connectivity is not an issue.
One of the roles that you're also taking on today is the Governing Council and CEO of China ASEAN Business Alliance. What's your current view of the growth of China and the ASEAN region? And also, I think you alluded to it earlier when you mentioned that China may eventually take over as in a superpower position. What's your current view of the growth of these two regions, and how do you see each of these regions playing a role to ensure collective business success and, to your point, a sustainable one over a long period of time?
China and ASEAN has been each other's largest bilateral trading partner since almost 10 years ago. And this will be so moving forward as well. Their close proximity. Within China, they have set up in Guangxi, Nanning, the capital at the Canton West, and annually they will get the 10 countries of ASEAN to get their head of state to be there, while they also will send in their head of state. And on annual basis, they also rotate what they call a head of ceremony or head of, which it will rotate from Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia onwards by alphabetical order, and which after whoever holds it will also moot or initiate projects, exchanges, etc.
Yeah.
So I guess we've seen from China and Malaysia, they have exchanges, Kuantan, and also the other one was another land in Guangxi together for each other to develop. So with such a platform like that, naturally the G2G collaboration is very strong. And so with that, the foreign trade on both sides, bilateral trade, will continue to be strong. Second part is we've seen China had actually grown really strong in the last 30 years, 3 decades. And also, I think in terms of technology adoption to now we're on the forefront of financial technology. So in there, with that 1.4 billion population that they had, and with that fintech technology, and in here, in this part of the world, we could also see our own consumer tech that are coming up, agri-tech, deep tech, and all the rest. We had also in the last 10-year growth, where early years was only just 2 unicorns. I think we were looking back about 2014. 2 unicorns to now, we had about 46 unicorns in Southeast Asia. And in China, well, they had 200 over or more in their unicorns. So I guess both sides requires each other market. Both sides had technology that can be collaborated.
Yeah.
And in Chinese side, they had their own domestic market that was great, but many of them want to go internationalize, and this is about the friendliest clusters or economic bloc they can work with. A regional cooperative economic pact called RCEP was signed with China since 2020, and that allows free trade, MRA, etc. So therefore, this gives a very natural spillover for all the trades. For Southeast Asia here, 700 million population, and with this, if it's well tested, they should be also brought to a Chinese market to test the market too. And I guess that's where they both add together as a natural extension of our 2B market. And $2 billion market is a 2 billion population market is about 1/4 of the whole world's population, or even 1/3.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Yes, and Southeast Asia being also nested together with India. If the three add up together, we have half the world's population. So I guess the growth is immense. And I think from World Economic Forum, United Nations, they all see that this part of the world will be the tomorrow's or next decades of growth. And I guess we have to actually balance off the politics, ensure stability, and then continuous business growth from here. And if they are, I think it's as promising as what we can see it to be.
And it's very exciting for us to be situated in this region to see and witness the growth in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and especially for the Singaporeans who are listening here, I think they are well nested where in Singapore, a melting pot of all the different cultures we can see in Asia. And I think we are blessed that we have known numerous of these Asian languages. So these are very highly portable. And also we will, in terms of our education process, I think NUS to NTU, all these various universities were top ranking, top 10 in the world. As NUS just got top 8, right? And then I think NTU was about top 11 or 13. So with this basically gives us a very good education, international outlook, and also enough of tools and competence to conquer this part of the world.
Yeah. Very exciting. Just 2 last questions from me. The first one is, so in summary, I mean, we have touched on different parts of your career, but what would you say is the most pivotal moment that, changed or shaped the perspective of what you're doing today?
Yeah, I guess perhaps it's a continuous process, and to say that there's a particular pivotal moment that actually that changed and turned over leaf. I'll say it's a continuous process, which I did highlight earlier. To every switch itself, as many of my colleagues have seen before and said, hey, why have you changed your career and changed your new industry? That is very big risk. Changing something you've not done before is a risk. But I think to me, a switch by itself, actually, one is a new opportunities, and usually that allows a certain growth. At the same time, sometimes marrying 2 different industries or competence allows you to create something new as a competitive edge that others may not have. So versus a narrow pathway.
Yeah.
So I guess if I've been asked would I do what I do again, I think probably yes, I would still do the same rather than pursue a singular narrow career route. Yeah.
That's very interesting because you also mentioned about melting pot, and we see a melting pot of different roles coming together and amalgamating in what you are doing today with a focus on sustainability. I mean, drawing from your experience at UN Global Compact. Yes, UN Global Compact, and then with the sustainability focus, and also with what you're doing now, and then tying everything together. Yeah.
Yes.
Looking ahead, any advice for people who are thinking about exploring an international career, how they should go about doing it? Should they just jump straight into it? What advice do you have for them?
Yes, I think that's great questions, and many of the career or professionals or even graduates who are new looking at, a lot of time I heard about is they were highlighting that by leaping to a new place, I would lose what I have at my current place. And to leap to a new territory will means I'm starting afresh with no friends there. And here it is, I'm leaving behind all the things that I have. I guess from someone who had done it before, I would say maybe the perspective could be changed, that going to somewhere totally new and ground zero means you have everything else to gain and lesser to lose.
Yes.
And I guess in the home ground here, Singapore, it's a great place to be at. But nonetheless, there's only just 5.8 million population now. And with this by itself, what we see here is no doubt very international, but it's not the whole world.
Yeah.
And I guess having seen certain part of the world, like as I just now mentioned about Sao Paulo, of the favela, down to the Egypt of how they have done things, and down to even in China, in Taiwan, and even down to early on I was gone to Moscow. That's where you found different culture and different way of operations are notably drastically different from what we think. And this humble our hearts, this broaden our mind, and this also at the same time deepen a little bit of our capabilities and also our tolerance level to say, let's then learn how they do something. I guess with this, that probably allow us to then start assimilating and learn a lot more things. And that's where, after returning back, and I've seen many of my other colleagues or friends who, when they're overseas and they came back, they're slightly different from how it is here. And they're slightly more resourceful. They're also slightly more tolerant of how things are. And they also had a broader mindset of how things could have evolved. And I guess for this professional career, new graduates, etc., who are looking out for international career, I'll say embrace it and treat it as a journey. And it's not like an investment that I must have an immediate return. If I go there, I must make sure I'll become a director before I come back. I'll make sure my salary set double or triple in that case. I think those experiences are invaluable. Even if the salary may have a slight drop, because Singapore has become quite expensive now, our salary is quite high. Even that has a slight drop, but I think the experience itself is priceless. And that's almost like if you go to some Ivy League school and you pay a school fee of 160,000, 180,000. In here, you're riding on a companies that will bring you there and therefore had exposure for free. So maybe having that kind of mindset might be more palatable. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. With that, we wrap up the English segment of today's episode. We'll now move on to the Chinese rapid fire questions. 我们就现在进行快问快答的环节。Victor， 你准备好了吗？
好，谢谢。
OK， 那首先能够用中文做个自我介绍吗
？Hi， 我叫嘉顺，我姓郑。我是 Global Catalyst Advisory 咨询管理顾问的总裁。然后我也在 Stout， 就是投资银行，在这里在做合并和并购。然后我也是在这个 RHT Consulting Asia 里头是这个 Group CEO， 集团总裁。是。然后在这里我们在帮起步公司集资，然后在策略方面，然后再到这个 public listing。Right， 所以这是我现在的那个工作。
好，那您认为就是在扩展到一个新的市场的时候，学习一门语言会是很重要的一个部分吗？
的确，那是一个最基本的一个工具啊。当你去国外的话，就 当然是虽然英语是一个国际语言，是一个到很多国家都可以互通的，不过到一个新的那个工作环境当中哦，他当地的那个地头蛇或者是当地的一些企业公司老板等等，都希望你能用他的语言跟他交谈。在语言它本身只不过是一个工具罢了，而这工具本身是让你可以引领进入更深的一层，就是在文化当中。例如如果去中国的话，你可以以中文和他去交谈，或中文当中也只不过是一个工具。如果你在交谈当中还能引入了解他的文化，甚至还有时可以吟诗作乐，还能在这里和他就是饮茶，或者是甚至喝白酒的话，他们会觉得你跟他其实是一个蛮相近的一个文化，他觉得是一个在这里做一个战略伙伴，是一个他们可以接受的。
好的，那我们就问一些比较有趣的问题。您就是旅游到了不同的，就是您到了各个不同的国家，那你最喜欢的国家是哪一个？
我想都蛮就蛮难说去不过既然你问了，有好几个国家是一个在这里是蛮难忘的。例如说埃及是一个5000年的古国，在埃及的单看埃及的这金字塔怎么样去建立起来，单看它在里头的那个它的梯级它里头有很多不同的梯级，然后还有不同的宝藏的地方。它甚至在设立的时候，在整个金字塔的下面就往这土地里头，它还延伸了很多一些不同的那个梯级，有些是一个刻意做出来战略性的一个死局，就让一些可能去那边盗墓的墓贼在那边就竭尽所能，然后之后结果就把他们给就是困住了。所以大家这样子想，5000年的历史，5000年的科技到现在要怎么样去设立一个这样子的金字塔，在我们现代当中还是很难去做，这是一个蛮叹为观止的一种做法的一个看法。当然还有一些其他的一些难忘的国家，例如在巴西的那个圣保罗当中当然看他们那边的贫富悬殊非常大，它的有一些画面可以看到，例如一边是一个高楼大厦，这高楼大厦是一个私宅也就是在新加坡的 condominium， 它本身每一层都有自己的一个很大的游泳池，这游泳池当中就每一层都有就它在照片旁边那边另外一端是一个高的城墙，里边全部是一些非常邋遢的一些房子屋子所以那边都是住着这个它叫 favela， 也就是那些平民啦、贫民窟啦，而两边造成一个非常正面的对比。对比它当中为什么会设立一个城墙呢？因为这些非常富有的人又害怕这些进来偷东西，所以他在建筑一个城墙。不过人看到就是在这里虽然是贫民窟的人他也不为他自己的环境所趋。我看到他们创造了很多的那个 social enterprise 社会企业，在当中去解决自己的问题。例如他们在当中也让自己可以成为一个企业家啦，他在这里能集资啦，在这里甚至建造自己的银行啦，甚至在里头警察都不敢进去他们的贫民窟他在这里把自己建立了一个自己的保安和那个就是一个防卫队所以这是一个看起来就是在这里不仅是他的环境，而是他们的那个多坚韧的一个他们的那个 commitment 还有他们的 will。OK。
好，那今天的那个播客就到此为止。那非常感谢Dr. Victor 今天和我们花了很多时间，就是分享你的经验，也是就是对于你就是带我们到不同的从一个商务领域当中带我们到不同国家去走走。那非常感谢 Victor 的时间。
谢谢因为给我这机会，没有也跟你们的听众一起就 聊聊和就是互动。谢谢你。
Thank you so much, Victor, for
Thank you.
taking the time today to share with us your experiences in our podcast episode. I've personally learned a lot about the different cultures across different countries and also how to think about building a sustainable business that makes sense in today's modern world. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Business Beyond Borders. If you have any feedback or thoughts, do write into us at support@bluent.com. Click to follow to tune into the next episode. See you again soon.